The colony city never slept. Neon lights flickered in broken signs, and smoke drifted through the narrow alleys. But for the alien girl, the city was nothing but a graveyard. She walked barefoot over cold stone, her body weak and trembling. The night air cut through her like a knife, and the heavy rain made her shiver even more. She had no clothes except for torn fabric around her shoulders. She pulled the cloth tighter, but it did nothing to warm her. Her thin frame shook, her ribs visible, her skin bruised from old beatings. She looked like a shadow wandering with no purpose. Every step was heavy, but she forced herself forward. She could not stop. To stop was to die. People saw her, but they did not care. Merchants near the marketplace turned their eyes away. A guard leaned against a wall and spat, pretending not to notice her. A group of children laughed cruelly and threw a small stone in her direction. She winced but kept moving. To them, she was nothing. Just another worthless slave thrown out when she became too weak. A reject. The city had no place for rejects. Her stomach growled painfully. She pressed a hand against it, but there was no food, no hope. She stopped near a corner where the roof of an old building gave some shelter from the rain. She crouched there, hugging her knees, trying to disappear from the world. Her eyes scanned the streets. So many feet walked past. Boots, sandals, claws, and metal legs of machines, all passed her by. Not one slowed down. Not one offered help. She lowered her head, whispering to herself in a broken voice. Why am I still alive? The words were carried away by the rain, but then someone stopped. A tall figure stood not far from her. His face was hidden under a hood, his coat heavy against the storm. Unlike the others, he did not rush past. He stood still, watching her. Her heart raced. Fear spread through her chest. Was he another slaver? Would he drag her back to the market? She pushed herself back against the wall, ready to run even though she had no strength. But the man did not move closer. Slowly, he pulled something from his shoulders, a cloak. Thick, dark, and warm. He crouched and placed it on the ground in front of her. The girl's eyes widened. She did not understand. Why would anyone? The man spoke, his voice deep but calm. Take it. She shook her head, clutching her rags. No tricks. I don't play tricks. His voice was steady, different from the mocking tones she knew. For a moment, the world froze. The rain kept falling, the city kept moving. But in that small corner, silence grew between them. Her hands trembled as she reached for the cloak. Slowly, she pulled it around her body. It was warm, so warm that tears stung her eyes. She had forgotten what warmth felt like. The man turned to leave without saying more. Wait! Her voice cracked. She did not know why she called out. Maybe fear of being left alone again. Maybe shock that someone had finally seen her. The man paused, looking back. The hood still covered his face, but she felt his eyes on her. She opened her mouth, but no words came. What could she say? She had no name, no home, no future. He spoke instead. You shouldn't be here. It's not safe. She laughed bitterly, though it came out weak and broken. Safe? There is no safe place. Not for me. The man studied her for a long moment. Then, without warning, he extended his hand. Her breath caught. His hand was scarred, rough yet steady. No one had ever offered her a hand, not without chains waiting at the other end. She hesitated. Fear screamed inside her, telling her to run. But another voice whispered, what if? This time, it is different. Her thin fingers reached out almost against her will. When her hand touched his, she expected pain. Instead, she felt strength, warmth, and something she had never felt before. Hope. The man pulled her gently to her feet. She swayed, weak from hunger, but he steadied her. Come, he said simply. She did not understand where he wanted to take her. She did not know why he cared. But in that moment, with the cloak around her shoulders and his hand holding hers, the cold streets no longer felt endless. For the first time in her life, she dared to believe. But belief was dangerous, because in the shadows eyes were watching. Others had noticed the human's kindness. And in this city, kindness was often punished. The night was not over, and her story had only just begun. The girl walked beside him, her bare feet splashing in shallow puddles. The heavy cloak hung over her small frame, dragging along the wet ground, but she clutched it tightly as if it were her only shield against the world. The human said nothing. He walked with slow, steady steps, his hood hiding his face, his silence heavy. Every corner they turned, she glanced back nervously. She was sure someone would follow, Sure, someone had seen him giving her shelter. In the colony city, acts of kindness were rare, and they were always dangerous. Finally, he stopped in front of a broken gate. Beyond it stood a small building, walls cracked, windows patched with metal sheets. It looked abandoned, forgotten by the city, but when he pushed the door open, warmth spilled out, a faint orange glow from a fire inside. She froze at the threshold. Why bring me here?" Her voice was shaky. The man looked at her, his face still hidden in shadow. "Because you need it." Her chest tightened. She almost laughed. Need it? No one cared about what she needed. For years, her needs had been ignored, food, safety, even a name. Yet here was a human, acting as if her life mattered. Inside, the room was small but alive. A fire burned in a stone pit, filling the air with heat. A wooden table leaned against the wall, its surface scratched with old marks. A kettle sat over the fire, steam rising slowly. There were blankets folded neatly on a chair and shelves with jars of food. The sight broke her. She could not remember the last time she had seen so much at once. Warmth, food, safety, it was more than a dream. It was impossible. She stepped back. "This is a trick. You'll sell me. Or chain me." The man's voice was calm. "If I wanted chains, I would not have given you my cloak." His words cut through her fear. Still, her body trembled, not knowing whether to run or stay. The man walked to the shelves, took a small bowl, and filled it with soup from a pot over the fire. The smell drifted toward her, rich, salty, filled with vegetables and spices. Her stomach growled so loudly she pressed her arms over it in shame. He set the bowl on the table and stepped back. "Eat." She stared at the soup, then at him. "Why?" "Because you're starving." It was such a simple answer, yet it crushed her. Tears filled her eyes, blurring the firelight. She had begged for food before. She had stolen scraps, fought dogs for bones, but never had someone placed food in front of her without demand, without cruelty. Her legs carried her to the table before her mind caught up. She picked up the bowl with both hands, afraid she might drop it. The first sip burned her tongue, but she didn't care. She drank greedily, the warmth rushing into her hollow stomach. For the first time in so long, she felt alive. The man said nothing, watching quietly as she ate. His eyes softened under the hood, though she could not see it. When the bowl was empty, she set it down with shaking hands. I don't understand. Humans don't care about us. They say we're nothing." He leaned back against the wall. "Not all humans." Her lips trembled. She wanted to believe him, but belief was dangerous. She had trusted once before, and it had ended with pain and chains. "Do you have a name?" he asked, her eyes widened. No one had asked her that in years. She whispered, "They called me." "Reject," he frowned, his jaw tightening. "That's not a name." She looked down. "It's all I have." The silence stretched. The fire crackled. The rain outside softened, and for the first time she felt the weight of his presence not as a threat, but as a shield. Finally he spoke again. "Then maybe it's time you had a new one." Her heart skipped. The words felt strange, impossible, like light breaking through clouds. Could she really have a name again? Could she be more than a shadow? But before she could answer, a sound came from outside, a sharp crack of boots on wet ground. Voices followed, low and threatening. Her eyes went wide with terror. "They're here. They're looking for me." The man straightened, pulling the hood back at last. His face was rough, scarred, his eyes cold but steady. He moved to the door, his hand resting on the hilt of something hidden beneath his coat. "Stay inside," he ordered. She shook her head, fear rising in her chest. "They'll kill you." "They always kill." He looked back at her, and for the first time, his voice carried something more than calm. It carried fire. "Not tonight." The door creaked as he stepped outside. The girl clutched the cloak around her body, her heart racing. She had tasted kindness for the first time, and now she feared it would be torn away before she could even understand it. The door slammed shut against the storm. The man entered again, shaking rain from his coat, his boots leaving dark prints on the wooden floor. He looked calm, but the girl noticed his hand carried fresh marks, scratches across his knuckles, dirt smeared along his sleeve. Outside, the voices had faded. Whoever searched for her had been pushed back for now. The girl sat frozen near the fire, clutching the cloak tighter around herself. She stared at him with wide eyes, fear and awe mixing together. No one had ever stood for her before. No one had ever fought so she could be safe. He dropped a small metal lock into a box by the door, then quietly bolted it shut. "They won't bother us tonight." he said, his voice low but steady. She wanted to believe him, but her body shook with old habits of fear. They will come back. They always do. He crouched near the fire, stirring the logs until the flames rose brighter. Orange light danced across the walls, painting his face clearly for the first time. His jaw was rough, lined with scars, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "You've lived in chains too long," he said, glancing at her. "Here, no chains." The words hit her like a hammer. She wanted to cry, to scream, to laugh, but she only hugged her knees tighter. "I don't know how to live without them," she whispered. The man did not argue. Instead, he rose and moved to a corner of the cabin. He pulled out an old trunk, its lid creaking as he opened it. Inside lay neatly folded clothes, simple, worn, but clean. He set them on the chair beside her. "Change," he said. Her eyes widened. "Why? These are yours." "I can't." "You can," he interrupted firmly. "You need them more." Her hands trembled as she reached for the fabric. The clothes were coarse, stitched many times, but to her they felt softer than silk. She clutched them to her chest, not daring to believe they were real. The man turned away, giving her space. She changed quickly, her heart racing, afraid he might suddenly take the gift back. But he did not move, his gaze fixed on the fire. When she was done, the cloak still wrapped around her shoulders, she whispered, "Thank you." He only nodded, then poured her another bowl of soup. "Eat again. You'll need your strength." Her stomach growled at the smell, but this time she ate slower, stealing glances at him between bites. He was different from anyone she had known. Strong, silent, but his silence was not cruel. It was heavy, as if he carried too many memories he did not speak aloud. Finally she asked, "Why me?" The question hung in the air. The man stared at the flames for a long time before answering. "Because once, I was the one on the street, cold, alone, waiting for someone to see me." Her breath caught. She had not expected that, a human suffering the way she had. It seemed impossible, yet the weight in his voice told her it was true. For the first time, she did not see him as just a savior. She saw him as broken too, different but scarred in ways she understood. The fire crackled louder, as if filling the silence that followed. He stood and walked to a shelf, pulling down a small lantern. "Rest," he told her. "The floor is cold." "Take the blanket and the chair." She shook her head instantly. No, I'll sleep by the door." "I'm used to it," his jaw tightened. "Not here." She swallowed hard, fear and gratitude twisting inside her. Slowly, she pulled the blanket around herself and curled on the chair near the fire. Its warmth wrapped around her, the cloak still pressed to her skin, the soup heavy in her belly. For the first time in her life, she was not trembling from hunger or cold. Her eyes began to close, but her heart beat fast. Sleep had always been dangerous. Sleep meant chains, beatings, cruel hands pulling her away. But now she listened to the fire crackle, the storm soften outside, and the man's steady footsteps as he moved about the cabin. Before she drifted off, she whispered so soft it was almost a thought. "Maybe. This is safe." The man heard her. His eyes softened, though his face remained hard. He set the lantern by the door, keeping watch. But outside, in the rain-soaked streets, shadows gathered again. Men whispered of a human who sheltered a worthless alien. They laughed cruelly, sharpening blades. Inside the cabin, she slept for the first time without chains. And for the first time, he felt the weight of someone depending on him again. It was only the beginning. The fire burned low, crackling softly in the cabin. The girl lay curled in the blanket, her breathing shallow, as if even in sleep she expected someone to drag her away. Her small hands gripped the edge of the cloak he had given her, holding it like a lifeline. The man sat near the door, silent, sharpening a knife on an old stone. His eyes were half on the blade, half on the fragile figure sleeping by the fire. Outside, the storm had passed, but danger still lurked in the streets. He knew shadows would return. Men always hunted weakness, but then she stirred. Her lips moved, whispering something broken. Her head twitched as if trying to escape invisible chains. No, not again. "Please don't," she muttered, her voice rising with panic. The man's hand froze on the blade. He set it aside and leaned closer. Her face was twisted with fear, tears running down even in sleep. Suddenly she screamed. Her body jerked and she sat up, gasping, clutching her chest. The blanket fell, her eyes wide and wild. She looked around the cabin, confused, trembling, trapped between dream and waking. The man didn't move closer, only spoke softly. You're safe. No one can touch you here. Her breathing slowed, but her eyes still burned with terror. She whispered, almost ashamed. I saw them. Again, he nodded once. Ghosts of the past don't leave easily. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Finally, she lowered her head and spoke, voice shaking. They chained me to a wall. They made me stand while others pointed, laughed. They called me broken, said I had no value. They took food away until I begged on my knees. And when I couldn't stand anymore, they threw me into the street. Her words cut into the silence like knives. Each sentence was jagged, raw. She clutched her arms as if still feeling the weight of shackles. The man's jaw tightened. His hand curled into a fist, the scarred skin pulling tight. He said nothing, because anger would not help her. She looked at him through tear-filled eyes. Why didn't they just kill me? Why leave me like this? He stared into the fire, his voice low, almost bitter. Because sometimes cruelty enjoys watching life suffer longer. Death is mercy to them. Her eyes widened at his words. For a moment she saw in him not just strength but the shadow of his own ghosts. He knew suffering. Maybe different from hers, but deep all the same. Her voice broke as she whispered, I don't want to dream anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces. The man reached into the trunk again and pulled out a small object. A piece of carved wood, shaped like a bird. Its wings were rough, unfinished, but the form was clear. He set it on the table in front of her. She blinked. What is it? A reminder, he said simply. When the dreams come, hold it. Remember you're not there anymore. You're here. Her trembling fingers reached out, touching the wooden bird as if it were fragile glass. Her lips parted, and for the first time since he had met her, she gave the smallest, faintest smile. It's beautiful. He didn't tell her it was the only thing he had carved during his own lonely nights when silence was his only company. He didn't tell her it had kept him sane. Instead, he only said, The past is a shadow, but shadows vanish when the fire grows. The girl held the carving close to her chest, tears falling silently. For the first time, her heart felt something new. Not just survival, not just fear, but a tiny spark of worth. Yet outside, in the city, those who had once owned her still searched. They whispered of the human who had dared to defy the chains. They sharpened their plans, waiting for the right moment. But inside the cabin, that night belonged not to chains, but to healing. The ghosts of her past had followed her into the firelight, but she was no longer facing them alone. The night was quiet, but the quiet felt wrong. The girl sat near the fire, holding the wooden bird tightly in her hands. Its rough wings pressed against her palms, grounding her every time her chest tightened with fear. She could still hear the echoes of chains in her mind, but here in the cabin the sound of burning wood was stronger. The man stood by the window, his shadow long against the wall. He had not spoken much since she woke from her nightmare. He only watched, listening to the city beyond. His scarred hands rested against the wooden frame, his ears sharp to every sound outside. Suddenly he lifted a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. Her breath caught. She pressed the bird tighter against her chest, her eyes wide. Outside, faint voices drifted through the wet night. Harsh laughter. The crunch of boots on gravel. The squeak of metal weapons being drawn. They said she was here, one voice growled. That human's hiding her. Another laughed coldly. Foolish man. No one steals from the market. The girl's heart pounded. She wanted to run, but her legs felt frozen. They've found me, she whispered. You should let me go. If they see me with you, they'll kill you too. The man turned, his face hard in the firelight. I don't let wolves take what I've chosen to protect. Her lips parted, stunned by his words. Chosen to protect? No one had ever spoken of her like that. The voices outside grew louder. A fist pounded against the cabin door. Open up, human. We know she's inside. The girl trembled, tears burning in her eyes. She clutched the cloak around herself, whispering, They'll drag me back. Please don't fight them. They always win. The man bent down until his scarred face was level with hers. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. They only win when no one stands against them. Stay low. Don't move until I say. Before she could answer, the door rattled under another blow. The wood cracked, dust falling from the frame. The man reached beneath his coat and drew a weapon. An old plasma blade, its edge humming faintly. The blue light lit up the cabin walls, reflecting in her wide eyes. The girl gasped. She had seen humans fight before, but never like this. He looked like a shadow forged of steel and fire. The door burst open. 3 figures stormed inside, their armor dull and rusted, their eyes greedy. chains hung from their belts, glinting in the firelight. "There she is," one hissed, pointing at the girl. Worthless trash thought she could escape. The girl shrank back, pressing against the chair, fear choking her voice. But before they could take a step closer, the man moved. The plasma blade cut through the dark with a sharp hiss. The first slaver barely had time to raise his weapon before the strike sent him crashing against the wall. Sparks flew as metal armor split. The second lunged, swinging a heavy chain. The man caught it mid-air, yanked hard, and slammed the attacker into the table. The wood cracked, soup spilling across the floor. The third, eyes wide with sudden fear, tried to retreat. But the man stepped forward, his blade humming inches from the slaver's throat. "Leave," the human growled, his voice like thunder. "Tell the rest. She is under my protection now." The slaver trembled, dropping his weapon. His eyes darted to the girl, then back to the blade. With a choked sound, he stumbled backward and fled into the night. Dragging the others with him, silence returned, broken only by the crackle of the fire. The man stood tall, the plasma blade dimming as he switched it off. His chest rose and fell slowly, calm even after the storm. The girl was still trembling, her heart racing as if it would burst. She stared at him, tears falling freely down her cheeks. You could have died," she whispered. Why risk everything for me?" He looked at her, his scarred face unreadable for a moment. Then he said simply, "Because no one risked anything for me when I needed it. That ends now." Her breath hitched. The words pierced her deeper than any chain ever had. She clutched the wooden bird tightly, her tears dropping onto its rough surface. For the first time, she felt something stronger than fear, something she had almost forgotten. Hope. But as the fire burned low, both of them knew this was only the beginning. The slavers would return, and next time they would not come alone. The night stretched long after the fight. The broken table lay across the floor, soup stains darkening the wood, chains scattered where they had fallen. The fire burned low, its light flickering weakly as if it too was tired from the battle. The girl sat in the chair, wrapped in the cloak, still shaking. Her hands clutched the wooden bird so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Every sound outside made her flinch, every shadow on the wall reminded her of the men who had tried to drag her away. The human sat near the door, silent as stone. His blade rested across his knees, blue light dimmed, but his grip was steady. His eyes never left the window. He did not speak, but the weight of his presence filled the cabin like armor. Finally, she whispered, her voice barely louder than the crackling fire. "They'll come back. And next time, more will come." He didn't look at her. Yes, her chest tightened. "Then you'll die. Because of me." His gaze shifted, steady and unyielding. "Or we'll live. Because of us." The word struck her harder than any chain. Us. She had never been part of us. Always them. Always slave. Always nothing. And now, this scarred human spoke as if she belonged beside him. Her throat burned. She looked down at her hands, at the carving he had given her. It felt heavier now, not like wood, but like a question she could not escape. A question of choice. She thought of running. If she slipped into the night, maybe the slavers would leave him alone. Maybe they would forget her. Maybe his kindness wouldn't cost him his life. But deep inside, she knew the truth. The market never forgot. The chains never forgave. If she ran, they would find her again, and this time, no one would come to her aid. And the thought of leaving him, the one who saw her as more than trash, filled her with a pain sharper than hunger, sharper than fear. Tears slid down her cheeks. She whispered almost to herself, "I don't want to be a burden." The man's voice was low but strong. "You are not a burden. You are a choice." She looked up stunned. "A choice?" He nodded once. "I chose to fight for you. You can choose too." Her heart pounded. All her life others had chosen for her. Where she slept, what she ate, how long she lived. She had never been asked to choose anything. Not until now. She stood slowly, the cloak slipping from her shoulders, her small frame lit by the dying fire. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. "Then I choose to stay, even if it kills me. I would rather die here, beside you, than live in chains again." The human's eyes softened just for a moment. He set the blade aside, his scarred hand pressing briefly against his chest in a silent gesture of respect. "Then you're free," he said, "truly free. Because freedom begins when you choose it." Her knees buckled under the weight of his words, but not from fear this time, from release. The invisible chains that had clung to her heart for years felt weaker, their grip loosening. She sank back into the chair, sobbing quietly, but her tears were different now. Not just of pain, but of decision. The man placed more wood on the fire. Flames rose again, chasing the darkness from the corners of the room. But the night was not finished with them. Far away in the city, the slavers gathered. Their leader, a tall figure with eyes like ice, listened as his men spoke of the human who defied them. His lips curled into a cruel smile. Then we'll remind him what happens to those who protect rejects, he hissed. No one shelters what belongs to the market. Back in the cabin, the girl did not know what storm was coming. But for the first time, she did not tremble in silence. She held the wooden bird against her chest, her choice burning inside her like a second fire. Whatever came, she would face it, not as a slave waiting to be dragged away, but as someone who had chosen her place, and her place was here. Dawn broke over the colony city, gray light spilling across the ruined streets. The rain had washed away the night's dirt, but it could not wash away the danger. Shadows moved with purpose, boots echoing against the stone. The slavers had returned, this time not 3 but many. 10 men armored in rusted metal, their chains clinking like cruel laughter. At their head walked a tall figure with pale, cold eyes. His coat was lined with scars of battles past, and in his hand he carried a whip that hissed with energy. This ends today, the leader growled. The human dies. The girl comes back to the market. Inside the cabin, the girl woke to the sound of approaching boots. Her heart skipped. Fear surged. But then her hand touched the wooden bird by her side. She remembered her choice. The man was already ready. He stood by the door, blade strapped to his back, his eyes steady. He had expected this. He always knew kindness had a price. They're here, the girl whispered. He nodded. Stay low, but don't be afraid. Fear is what they want. Her breath shook. And if you fall? His voice was calm, as if carved from stone. Then rise, because you're not a slave anymore. Tears burned in her eyes, but she nodded, clutching the cloak around her shoulders. The door burst open. The leader stepped inside, his men filling the room with steel and chains. There she is, the leader sneered, and the fool who thinks he can protect her. The man drew his plasma blade, its hum filling the air with raw energy. She is not yours, the leader laughed. Everything broken belongs to the market. She is nothing but trash. The girl's voice broke the silence. She rose from her chair, trembling but standing tall. I am not trash. Every head turned toward her. Her voice cracked, but she spoke again, louder. I am not yours. I choose to stay, the slavers sneered. Choice? She doesn't even deserve a name. But her words had lit a fire, and the man moved like a storm. The plasma blade cut through the air, its glow slicing chains before they could wrap around him. He struck with precision, every movement born from scars and survival. The slavers fell one by one, their laughter turning to screams. The leader cracked his whip, its energy snapping against the blade, sparks flying in bursts of blue and red. The cabin shook with the clash, wood splintering, fire scattering embers across the floor. The girl crouched near the hearth, clutching the wooden bird, her heart pounding. But this time she did not feel helpless. This time she shouted, "Behind you!" The man moved just in time, twisting to block a strike. He fought not just with skill, but with purpose. The purpose of shielding the fragile spark that had been placed in his care. The leader roared in anger, striking again and again, but the human did not fall. His scars had not broken him. They had built him. And with one final strike, he cut through the whip, the blade glowing bright. The leader staggered back, eyes wide with shock. The man's voice was like thunder. She belongs to no one. Not anymore. With a swift motion, the blade struck true. The leader fell, his chains scattering across the floor. Silence filled the cabin. The remaining slavers fled into the dawn, their courage broken. The girl stood frozen, tears running down her cheeks. The man turned, his blade dimming, his chest rising with heavy breaths. He looked at her, not as a savior, but as someone waiting for her to decide who she would be now. She stepped forward, dropping the wooden bird into his scarred hands. You gave me this so I could believe I was free, but now I want something else. He looked at her, waiting. She took a breath, her voice trembling but sure. I want shelter. Not in walls, not in fire, but in your heart, if you'll let me. The man froze, the weight of her words striking deeper than any blade. Slowly he closed his hand around the carving. then reached out with his other hand. "You already are," he said softly. She stepped into his embrace, tears falling freely but her smile breaking through at last. For the first time, she was not trembling. For the first time, she was not afraid. She had no chains, no market, no past. Only a human's heart and the shelter she had longed for all her life. And outside, as the first sunlight touched the broken city, a new story began, not of a slave, not of a soldier, but of two souls who had found each other in the cold streets of nowhere.